we left Tobermory and we came here. We were just sort of trying to find a place for having some lunch really. So nothing special. I wasn't expecting to do a painting around here. It's a nice view, you know, the lake and the mountains behind. It's a nice view, but I didn't think it was worthy of a painting really. So I decided to take a little walk, and then I found something that was worth painting. And I thought, well, this is the first place on Mull that we're going to paint. So it's just down this little path here. And it's funny how compositions come to you. Sometimes they come by accident. So come along this way and we go down here. So here's the view that I came across, and I like it a lot. I think it was really quite a pleasant surprise to see. Mainly because you've got foreground interest, and I do like a bit of foreground interest, and the sort of quay there and the little boat on the water, and the colour of the boat in the water is really nice as well. And you've got that interesting water-land sort of process as well, one of my favourite compositional tricks. So I think that's good enough to have a little go at a painting. So here's the composition, and I really quite like it. There's something quite nice about it, and I think it's the relationship between the boat here and the little quay. I think that's nice. Sort of tells a story. Then you got the water, then you got the reeds coming on the mid ground, and then you got the water behind the trees and the big mountains in the distance. Nothing's really quite to scale on it. I'm not necessarily trying to copy exactly what's in front of me. It's an interpretation of what's in front of me really. It's one of the benefits of being a landscape painter plein air, is that you're not copying photographs, and that helps, I think. That helps the composition. Right, so here we go. This is all the nervous part of the actual process of painting watercolour, the beginning part. It's where you have to develop the plan of your attack on it. So I'll start with the sky, head down to the mountains, and then the foreground. So the sky. So a little bit of cobalt blue. It's a grey sort of sky today. There's not a lot going on. This sort of darkness, so a little bit of. It really is a grey colour now, not blue. So I'm going to mix a few colours up and get plenty of colour down. You don't want to stint on colour really. Right, little thought process now. So it is quite a grey sky. Right, here we go. So a little bit of. So I'm using quite a lot of my palette today for this part of it. Here we go. And I want to introduce some light patches in the sky as well. I don't want it to be even, because it is quite a varied sky today. It's quite an interesting sky. There's sort of dark clouds intermingling with it. Now the light's changing a lot today, so that's going to be a bit tricky for Tanya and her videography. Go across. So I'm trying to leave patches of lighter area where the clouds are. It's not an exact representation. You must never think that I paint it exactly. I don't paint exact representations of what I'm painting. It's always an interpretation for me, and it's the interpretation which is so fascinating. How you interpret a landscape is so important. Sometimes not what you expect. A bit of that colour in. So we come to the horizon, which I'm going to lighten as I get to the bottom there. So you can see it's quite an interesting sky already. So keep it quite light at the top. It's a very moody sky. So I'm trying to capture that moodiness to it. So there's going to be 2 layers in this sky, I think. So that's the first layer in. That's quite fun, isn't it? Skies are quite tricky, but don't dwell over them too much. So now I'm heading into the background now, this very dramatic sky amongst all my splashes. And it's quite a dark colour. There's a bit of red to it, a bit of blue. It's very dramatic. So the mountains have got to come in, really get a sense of feel of it. So I want to contrast the mountain with the sky. A lot of painting is about contrast, I think. So you're contrasting tones, light against dark, dark against light. Changing that colour a bit around. And going for it as well. Going for it. That's fun. Then it hits that bit of land there. Nice. That turned out nicely, better than I thought it would. That's good. How interesting is that? So I'll let that dry for a bit, then I'm going to give a few details of it as well. Maybe a few rocks here. Right, so now we'll head down to the next layer, which I think is going to be the trees in the sort of mid-distance there. I'm trying to make it too green. I still wanted to give it the effect that it's distant, so a blue effect on it. So, but I want to give it the idea that it's trees without making it too green. Remember, I'm not trying to paint reality. I'm trying to create a painting here that will show a scene, not necessarily just pure reality. So there's a sort of that sort of scene. Okay, I'm going to introduce a little bit of, this is a bit of a risky part here, I'm going to introduce a little bit of the sky again. So just to darken the sky slightly. I always find this a risky stage to do, but it's worth, it's just taking a bit of courage really. So darkening the sky down in places. So let's give it a little area here, because it's sort of coming, it's a sort of, change the colour again, get a bit of browns in there too. There is an effect of layers of clouds today, which I quite like, maybe going into there a bit. And spreading it up high, softening it a bit, giving an interesting effect. Going right the way across. I like a dramatic sky. It's very easy just to leave the sky quite plain, but I always feel like I haven't done myself justice when I just leave a plain sky. I always want to give it a little bit more, which adds to the risk of it. But there we go. So that's the sky put in, and wow, it's really had a nice effect on it. I like that. So, but it's always a risk. Watercolour is about taking risks. I think that's half of the battle of it. You've got to take your heart in your hand sometimes. So I'm going to add a little bit of drama to the mountain now, and there's a little bit of redness to it too, a bit of brown maybe. But I think it needs a few sort of shadows coming in maybe, and just to give it a sense of 3 dimensions. It's not just one plain colour. It's a multitude of different things coming in. So I'm going to really try hard to develop that. Don't know if that's worked. Yeah, so something like that. So it just feels like there's something more than just a simple wash on it. Okay, so the next layer. The next layer is getting the far distant green. So a bit of raw sienna, maybe, and you've got this area of lovely green coming in here. This is of the trees. A nice bit of land in the distance coming across here. There we go. Just change the colour a bit. That's nice. So maybe the yellow ochre on it in the middle, just to try and give it a little bit more colour. And then that green goes all the way across, like that. So that's the next green bit of land coming in. That's quite fun, quite like that. So I'll let that dry for a bit. So what I'm going to do now is tackle the water. So I'm going to be a little bit, maybe ultramarine blue, a bit of cobalt. very easy to overdo this. I have done it a few times. It's got to be quite subtle, the water. And now it's a question of bringing that in, bringing the water into the picture. There you go, something like that. Goes way into the distance. It's nice. And maybe a bit of brown, just to brown it off a bit. Keep it going. But sometimes you've got to really keep these washes going. If you leave them too long, they become a bit sort of cauliflower-like, which isn't ideal. Trying to change the colour as well. Keep it going. I've only used my Winsor and Newton watercolour mop. That's the only brush I've used so far. My 13mm. Bring it down into here now. Now the boat's a problem. The boat is tricky today, and I think I might have mentioned it earlier on, it's constantly moving. So I've tried to do a decent drawing of it underneath here, and of an angle that I like, but it constantly changes. It's absolutely perfect at the moment, but it's constantly moving. So now I'm going to bring a bit of cerulean blue into the picture, and maybe a bit of brown as well. I think it does darken off quite a lot here. Maybe that was too much. So if it's too much, I'll just change the colour again, just to soften it. Do you see how you keep a wash going? You've got to make sure that it doesn't dry out too much. I'm going all over the shop here, so I'm not letting it dry out anywhere. And then you can get a easy transition. Then finally it gets quite dark at the front. Like that. Okay, so there's that wash in. Okay, so I've left the boat silhouetted against it. So I'm going to put in the islands in the middle now. So a little bit of yellow ochre, maybe a bit of yellow itself as well. Some blues. And these little islands, maybe some Viridian, hooker's green. There's lots of colours on this. So you're going to get these islands of reeds coming in. So I'm going to get on with the most difficult part of this now, which is the boat. Mainly because it's all over the shop. It's moving around a great deal, so it's going to be the real tricky part of it. So just trying to do it as best as I can. So I don't know if I've tried painting something that's constantly moving. It's not the easiest things to do. So it's a cerulean blue really. And it gets a bit darker. Take very careful looks at this thing. It's moved into a nice position at the moment. So I've got some nice colours here now to try and depict it. So it gets dark underneath it, which I'm trying to depict, and then lightish on the sides. Tricky. It's always fun painting something that hurts you. This is sort of hurting me a bit at the moment. A few bits of detail. What's coming on? You just got to do your best when it's tricky. It's quite dark underneath the boat here. It goes into the water. Shadow. The shadow is a very important part of this. So I'm using quite a small brush, a number 4 round on it. Maybe we could have gone a bit dark, a bit lighter, bigger. Okay, I hope that's dry. Now I've got to get the side of the boat. Make sure it's dry. Okay, so this is the tricky line. And then it goes up there. And then it goes here. Anyway, trying my best. Yeah, that's quite fun. Quite enjoy that. Okay, I'm going to get to a bigger brush now. A number 10 round, and I'm going to try and bring it into the rest of the water. Into the rest of the water. So this is its reflection coming in. A lot of these things you just have to have a go at and sort of hope for the best, really. And I really don't want to paint it in a way that's too detailed, and that's my biggest fear in my painting, is painting something that looks too detailed. That to me is the best way to ruin a painting. So I'm going to start wandering into other places now. Go back into the reeds to get the bit of shape of the reeds coming in. Sort of all sorts of different shadows and darknesses coming in. Okay. So the way the reeds come closer in. Some interesting colours. I like variety of colour in a picture. I think that's part of what makes a nice painting. If you can have variety, then you're really coming on. So I'm going to give a little bit more interest in the water at the moment. It's a little bit too plain for my liking. So sort of just give it a few different shades of values in there, because there is a ripple effect that going over it, which is quite nice to see. It's quite a greyish sort of colour as well, not a bright colour at all. So it comes in bands. It's quite interesting. There's a little bit of a wind today, so it's creating a little bit of a ruckle on the surface. We'll try and get a bit of that going. Something like that. It is quite dark as well. Into the depths in the bottom left-hand corner. Really dark here. So I'm going to try and give a little bit of detail to the boat now. Now the boat's the most important part of the picture, so it's good to get something going in here. So that's a dark. That's where the oar goes, that side, and then underneath here, a bit of darkness too. So important to capture some detail, but not too much detail. I want to hint at it. If I paint too much detail, then I've set a theme for the painting, and you have to keep on going with that. So that's why I'm always slightly scared about detail, because it creates a sort of standard that you have to keep up to. So if you have part of it which is really detailed and part of it that's not detailed, that's going to be tricky. So what I'm aiming for is just enough detail. It's quite dark under, right there, it's quite dark. So try and capture the darkness here. back of the boat. That's quite nice and contrasting. Okay, and then there's a wire, a little rope that comes out here, goes into the water. Yeah, that's quite fun. So you have a little bit more depth in the shadows here, where it goes underneath the boat into the water. Right, so I'm going to go to the bottom left of the picture now, and I'm going to head up to those the little bit where you tie the boat onto. So, so here, that's good. You've got these sort of bits of woods, very old wood. So I'm going to try and depict it like it's old as well. Rough. It goes quite blue as well. So that's raw Sienna, no, raw Umber. Another one here. Very mottled. Give it a bit of shape. And another one comes at the back of it. Okay, so the water goes really dark at the base of it, so I'm going to try and get a nice little bit of a bigger brush here, and it's quite a warm colour really. So a little bit of burnt sienna and burnt umber, ultramarine blue, and it's going to try and give it a little bit of darkness here. Just a little ripple in the water. Okay, just trying to get to feel like it's a bit of land in there, so put that in there, maybe that there. Not trying to be too neat and tidy, that's one of my tricks. And a few bigger trees we're going to pop in. Quite a lot of yellow in this, on the island here. That's all the reeds. Flowers, I think. Okay, so I'm going to try and form the background a bit more here. Maybe I think it's quite important. So there's a tree here. So the dots of trees in the distance, which are a little bit darker than the mountain. And, when you get to this sort of stage, what you're looking for is to try and spot the places that you can improve on. So it's a question of taking stock of the picture and say, well, where can I improve it? Where can I improve it? It's always the question that I have in my mind. Where can I improve it? So you have these trees on the right, which I might be able to do something to. I don't really too detailed with it. So it looks like it's got some sort of darker parts. And then this land here coming in. I think that's helped it. So there are lots of little reeds coming in. So I think there's still these little reeds coming in here. So I think they're quite interesting. All over the shop. They might always look for those little things that are going to help it. I think those are part of them. sticking out of the water. So everywhere. They've created a sort of something for the eye to grab onto. Right close up as well. Here. In reality, there are thousands of them. So I've got my little brush, my little number 3 round brush to do this. That boat's totally moved again. Right, I'm just going to go to the bits of wood over here again, just to pop a little bit more of something in there. There's a bigger clump of reeds now, which I'm going to try and pop in, but I'm going to pop them in a mass, sort of lumps of it, and then add a little bit of detail at the end. So you give it the sort of base values. Here, flies everywhere. So I put the little red buoy in here, which I think is quite a nice little touch. So here, that's what the boat's attached to. So it's got a little shadow. Just a few more little tips of darker shadow, just to give the idea that the trees over there at the bottom are in the midst of a wood. Base of the wood, you have this sort of dark that's coming in this foreground as well. So I'm going to try and give the reeds a few more touches of colour here, just to give it the impression of the reeds. There are lots of them here. See a few midges coming around now, which is the first of the day. The wind's dropped a bit, so when the wind drops, watch out. A little bit more of a darker colour. So it goes in here, it comes out there as well. So that's the oar. Might need a little bit of white paint as well. So therefore it needs a little bit on the inside here where the darkening part of the boat is. Just give it the impression that it's on the inside. A little, just the ropes to go in here. The ropes going down into the water. Add a bit of white paint to that in a minute, and they go off to the boat. There. So I'm just going to put a bit of white paint here and there now. The final touches really. And on the boat really. So just to give it a little bit of contrast. The top rail there's a nice reflection. To there. The ropes now, over here, they need a little bit of white. As to these, and just need to just to highlight them a bit lighter. Give it a sense that they're sort of broken. Yeah, I think that's what that does. I'm going to go to the reeds again. So they've got some lighter reeds in this part here, which I think are worth putting. I can really feel a few drops of rain coming down now, so I'm hoping we're not going to have to stop. Rain on a watercolour painting is not a good thing. the worst thing that can happen to watercolour paintings. It does happen from time to time though, you do ruin one. It might help if I do, that's helped it. These few lines of reflection. So I'm just going to do a few pencil marks, nothing dramatic, doesn't really need too much. I think maybe a few of these reeds might come out with a bit of detail here, maybe come around these a bit. It's not going to do too much, this. It's just something I like. And last but not least, and that's just to give it a sign it. So I think that's dry. So okay, here we go. James Potter. Right, there we go, there's the finished painting, and done quite quickly really, because the weather conditions were really dicey. I just feel it's going to rain at any second, so I could feel 1 or 2 drops, which really made me feel like, oh, come on, let's get it done. But I got it done, and it turned out okay. The boat was the tricky part because it kept on moving, so it's always a bit of fun when something keeps on moving like that. Fun, or is it just frustration? I don't know, but that's the joy of painting outdoors really. You have to tackle these difficult moments, and I like the composition of it, and I like the mountains of it in it. You can see the mountains are a bit bigger in this painting than they are in real life, and that's what being a painter is really. You're not limited like you are in photography to painting exactly what you see. So I enjoy that part of it. It makes me very happy to sort of alter the picture a little bit. Anyway, there it is, and I hope you enjoyed that. And I look forward to seeing you next time, possibly the finishing part of, or the next part of our trip to Iona. I did do 1 or 2 things whilst Tanya was out doing some videography, and gave a bit of time to think about it a bit more and to contemplate the painting and what might need to happen. So I've added a few bits and bobs to it, a little bit to the water, a few more white paint marks, and I think it improved it a fair amount. So you never quite know when a painting's finished, and sometimes taking a second look is a good idea.